Hello lovely people, and a very warm welcome back to The Library is Open. So I hope you brought your library card, darling. See how I just slid through that? You know, with the precision of a figure skater or something. Hope you're all well, and welcome to a slightly later in the week than usual, just spilled tea, episode of The Library is Open. I apologise for that, being a bit late uploading. Normally these go up on Monday, so I can sort of start the week with a smile, as it were, by speaking to you all. But it's been a very busy week work-wise this week, which is not a complaint, just an acknowledgement of the situation. But you know what, I'm here now, and maybe you'll enjoy this with your Frosties over the weekend. Other breakfast cereals are available, and I'm not affiliated. So I've literally just made myself a fresh cup of tea from the lovely Bird and Blend, who I've mentioned before, in my gorgeous little, obsessed with this, little Mandarin teapot. See, matches me t-shirt. You ever do that, forget the word for like a really everyday item? I do it all the time. It's like, what's this? A canary t-shirt. So yeah, I hope you're all well. Me and my canary t-shirt, I've been here behind the library desk stamping books. Well, you don't stamp anymore because it's all digital, isn't it? But metaphorically stamping books and reviewing them for your pleasure. So this week, a couple of things that I've read I want to go over, and to tell you about other stuff that's going on that's kind of book or writing related in my life. And I encourage you to sound off and do the same. So this week, I keep not meaning to set themes, but I feel like this week, yet again, there's kind of been a theme a little bit, which, hence the title of this video, I've called A Sting in the Tail. So these have been books that I've read that have had sort of a twist at the end, or something unexpected, be that plot-wise, be that character or style-wise, whatever. And you know, I mean, it could just be that I'm looking for a correlation after the fact because it's happened so many times, and it could just be totally random. But in a way, I'm kind of like, you know what, let's just embrace the themic reading. Maybe we all do that. We are quite, you know, creatures of habit, aren't we, as people? So the first one I want to talk about, oh, these are across a couple of genres, by the way. So the first one I want to talk about was an impulse purchase, actually, and a lot of it was to do with the fact that the cover was just beautiful. I just really liked it. I say beautiful, I'll show it to you. I should possibly have gone with vivid or striking, maybe. And I've never actually read, this is, sorry, The Burning Girls by C.J. Tudor. I've never actually read a C.J. Tudor novel, but I know they are a very popular author. Got a very funky author photograph at the back. I really like their hair. And these, I believe, are a series, generally speaking, of thrillers with sort of paranormal overtones, or could be read as paranormal, or you're never quite sure, so on and so forth, which I quite like as a sort of subgenre. And although this cover is reminding me very much, in a slightly darker way, of Eleanor Oliphant, you know, with the matches, but this is definitely not a feel-good story. So basically, this centres around a vicar called Jack, and she and her daughter, there was some trouble in their last parish in Nottingham, and they end up moving to this small little village called, I think the village is called Chapelcroft, yeah, my short-term memory. And basically it's a place where there's lots of local legends, and there's a story of Protestant martyrs in the past, and two girls who were sacrificed, the Burning Girls. And then they have like a sort of festival every year where they burn corn dolls of these, or perhaps they're wooden dolls, I forget, of the Burning Girls. And the you know, there's something gone on at the church, basically. Two young women disappeared in the past at the start of the 90s, I believe it was, and then it turns out Jack discovers that her predecessor took his own life. There's also a lot going on in the history of the village with like a disappearing curate, and you know, there's a very influential family who don't like Jack asking too many questions. You know, so all the sort of prime elements of this sort of pseudo-gothic English countryside villagey sort of novel. And then Jack's daughter Flo gets involved with this young guy called Wrigley who has dystonia, which causes him to have tremors and stuff, and she sort of befriends him and they get closer and that, and then rumours come out about his past, and you know, someone starts sending Jack threatening messages about her past, and basically it's up to her to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, there's an unnamed narrator in some of the chapters. It's sort of dual narrative-ish, like not a lot of dual narrative, but ish, whereby we sort of get this guy's perspective who's clearly escaped from somewhere and is in pursuit of someone that we are led to believe is the Reverend. Now, obviously all this takes place in the shadow of the church, which is, you know, pretty suitably gothic anyway, in terms of religion and rites and so on and so forth are prime, you know, sort of categories for superstitious thought and so on and so forth. And because, you know, a lot of imagery in churches and religious buildings in general is quite gothic anyway, and there is something very gothic about that as an environment and as a system of practices, you know, and I say that without a value judgment, purely an aesthetic one. So this was really interesting. I don't know if it was just me, but because I enjoyed it, I'm just having a sniff there. I really enjoyed it, but then it felt like it sort of teased out the story for quite a while, and then halfway through it just started sort of galloping, and I was like, oh, we're at the end, alright, interesting. And the sting in the tail, as we get to said end, is the fact that all these plot lines, well, it may have been supposed anyway that they would all sort of coalesce together. The way they coalesce is the sting, I suppose, and it doesn't leave you with... It's satisfyingly unsatisfying at the end, I'll just say that, because you discover a lot of information very quickly that makes sense of a lot of what's come before. But what C.J. Tudor does really nicely is she doesn't sort of draw really clear lines for you, so she lets you sort of live in that ambiguity, which I really quite like. But yeah, the sting here is more of a burn, perhaps, in the sense that all the characters are running from something and they can keep running, but ultimately, you know, who's the real pursuer? Is it a literal person, or is it, you know, essentially themselves? So yeah, some quite twisted stuff going on there in terms of the past coming back to claim things in the present, and you're never quite sure if there was any sort of supernatural overtone or not, which is, as I say, quite good. But yeah, it gallops on at a fair pace. I thought it was good. I liked it. Will I read another C.J. Tudor? Maybe. I'm kind of intrigued now to see if this is their particular style. I quite fancy The Chalk Man, which is their, I think their first novel, so I'm going to maybe have a look out for that. But I thought it's quite interesting. There's been a lot of books with imagery around fire lately, haven't there? I wonder what that's about, sort of, in terms of, like, the nation's psyche. But yeah, if that sounds like something you're interested in, very much not a cosy crime, but containing lots of similar elements, actually. So it's like a subversion, a gothic subversion of cosy crime. There you go. The second one is quite a different proposition, and this is, you heard me talk about this in my most anticipated books of 2020, and it's The Shape of Darkness by Laura Purcell. Beautiful cover design there. And this one is very much, you know, in one of my favourite, set in one of my favourite time periods, which, as you know, is Victoriana. My love of Victoriana influences Miasma, who you'll know of the Vegan Queens, but also, you know, my sort of aesthetic and historical interest. I can't really explain why, there's just something about it. And this is, like, right bang in the middle, because it takes place in the world of seances and spirit mediums and stuff. This is Laura Purcell's fourth Victoriana novel. The previous ones were Silent Companions, The Corset, and Bone China, which I'm probably going to get around to after reading this. And this centres on a silhouette cutter artist who makes silhouettes of people, obviously, called Agnes Darkin, who lives with her mother and her nephew. And she's recovering from something at the start of the book that's been quite significant. I think it's either pneumonia or something like that. Something quite serious for the time, anyway. And she's sort of struggling to make ends meet as well, and she's been attended by this physician. And then, as this is happening, her clients, the people whose silhouettes she's cut, start to turn up dead. And she's led to a spirit medium called Pearl, who is an albino person, who is able to go into sort of spirit trances and commune with the undead. And she lives with her sister and their father, whose jaw's been worn away by phosphorus. It's quite gross, but compelling. So basically Agnes wants to find out the truth of what's happening to her clients. Is she being targeted? You know, sort of what's going on? Is someone trying to frame her? And she ends up becoming involved with the spirit medium, and that just sort of dredges up a whole load more trouble. There's no ambiguity on this one about the supernatural elements. There is very much a supernatural element, but the sting comes in when we realise what is and what is not supernatural. And there's actually quite a good twist at the end that I'm not going to say was completely unforeseen, but it's actually managed very well. And as with the CJ Tudor, leaves us in that satisfying unsatisfaction of real ambiguity as to like what's going to happen now, because it leaves on quite a cliffhanger, but not an annoying one, as I say. The characterization in this is great, really, really interesting, very, very compulsively readable. Loads of stuff really interesting about trance mediums, spirit mediums, mesmerism, and how that operated both legitimately and as falsehood in the past. And also I love the stuff about Victorian portraiture in here as well, and the sort of mores of society through art and stuff like that. But what I also really liked was that it was set in Bath as well, and not London. I've sort of commented before on how, you know, certain historical periods seem to have geographical locations, but it's really nice to see Victoriana outside of London. So I really, really enjoyed this, and I am going to go and look at her other books. And finally, one I don't have a physical copy of because I've listened to it on audiobook is Raven Leilani, another one I mentioned in my most anticipated reads, a book called Luster, which is about a young black woman in America who becomes involved with a married man called Eric, who informs her that he is having, that he is in an open marriage, and so they begin an affair of sorts. So is it an affair if it's an open marriage? I'm not sure. Maybe it's just a dalliance or a relationship. I don't know. And then so he's white, as is his wife, and then our narrator, who is she's very witty, very postmodern, very sort of cutting in many ways about some. She's sort of very matter of fact in the sense that there's some quite horrific things touched on in here in terms of race and gender, but also, you know, experiences in contemporary society. It's very much an of-now novel, minus the corona. She sort of becomes involved with both of them in this sort of, and she ends up moving into their house and forging a relationship of sorts with the wife and the daughter, who's an adopted black girl. And it's a really interesting look at how white people navigate their relationships with black people in the shadow of Black Lives Matter, and, you know, the pedagogy of racism and stuff like that. But it's also really good at looking at concerns for, you know, contemporary young people, but also how they discuss and process the things that they've been through. You know, there's an undercurrent of violence in here as well, not only the violation of the body, but also a violation of the mind. It touches on so many things, it's so difficult to say. It's a little bit like a sort of much less stylistically one note, and I don't mean that as a criticism, as Ducks Newburyport, in the sense that it could be a novel for all time. It's so compelling, and I must give some shout outs here to the narrator. I forget her name, unfortunately, who delivers the text in really sort of deadpan, and that's not a criticism, a very sort of matter-of-fact way that really, really contributes to the experience of listening. You're not guided by the actor's emotion, you're more listening to the words and allowing them to act on you without, you know, sort of being influenced either one way or another, which I actually find really, really interesting. So I suppose the sting here, if we're going to tie it into a thematic thing, I forgot my cup of tea, is that actually something that in other novels might have been built an entire plot around, or even, you know, might have been major dramas, are dispensed with quite quickly, which is not to say that they don't have impact in this world or on this character, but it really gives you an insight, a stinging insight into the psyche of what it is to be alive and to be a member of that generation today. You know, what almost pales into insignificance, which should actually be quite a large issue. And, you know, and how we negotiate identity in a way that is actually quite prosaic and everyday, which I just find really, really fascinating. So it's quite a short read as well, which is feels absolutely bang on, because it gets to the nub of the matter without becoming gratuitous. My apologies, we were ever so slightly cut off there. Thankfully, I'd kind of reached the end of my point, so that's all to the good, isn't it? So yes, that is this week's What I Have Been Reading. What have you been reading this week? Do let me know. Do let me know any of your thoughts, if you've read any of the books I mentioned, or if you intend to. You know, I always love to hear that. Once again, apologies it was late this week. I will try and get things in on time, but if not, know that it's not a reflection on me wanting to make the content. It's just, you know, trying to negotiate that work-life balance and making everything fit together like a jigsaw, such a way as we can. But I think we're a pretty tight community here, aren't we? So I hope you'll forgive me. But that's it for now. So put your library card somewhere safe. Put it somewhere snow safe. It's been snowing a lot lately in the UK. And until next time, the library is closed. As I say, do give us a like. Do give us a follow. What is this? Twitter. Do give us a subscribe. Or don't. That's fine too. Just enjoy the content. And drop us a comment if you would like to, because I really love to read them and to have that little digital conversation. Oh, I've got to inform you. I told you I'd tell you what I was doing in my writing life. So the Storm Shepherd, which I mentioned, has all been recorded now, and we are almost ready to go with releasing the information about its release, obviously, and when it will be available. So I will keep you updated on that now. And I'm also writing a new show on commission, which I can't really talk too much about at the moment, but if and when I can, I will let you know. So that's kind of me for now. Yes, let's leave it there, shall we? Let's leave it there, and as I say, more details soon. Do take care of yourselves. Do take care of each other, and much love until we speak once more. All right, bye bye. Mwah.